Calling today's Park and Rec meeting to order. If I can ask you all to stand and we'll recite the pledge together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Vicki, can you take roll call?
Commissioner Armstrong?
Here.
Commissioner Boley?
Present.
Commissioner Cohen is absent. Commissioner Coladonato?
Present.
Commissioner De La Torre?
Here.
Commissioner Diaz is absent. Commissioner Goodman?
Present.
Commissioner Lamorte?
I'm here. It's Lamort.
Lamorte, okay. Vice Chair Navarro?
Present.
Commissioner Trent is absent at the moment, and Commissioner Wright Duran is absent at the minute.
Thank you. Can you report on the posting of the agenda, please?
The agenda for today's meeting was posted at City Hall, the Leisure Center, and on the city's website last Thursday, September the 13th, before 5 p.m. as required by established policies and procedures.
Thank you very much. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes and determine if they are acceptable? If so, if we can have a motion to accept the minutes?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you both. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll abstain because it's my
Abstain.
first time.
And abstain? So we have 2 abstains. Does that still count out? Great. Thank you very much. Vicki, do we have any correspondence today?
No, we do not.
Thank you. All right, it is time for public comment. At this time has been set aside for members of the public to address Parks and Recs Commission on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. Although the commission values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. 3 minutes will be assigned to each speaker. Please remember to identify yourself as you introduce yourself and where you are located, live. Please step forward, our first speaker. Thank you, Paul.
Good afternoon, commissioners and friends and neighbors. My name's Paul Hendrickson, Palm Springs resident. We've been here to speak before. I say we, my husband as well. And we've asked for a resolution of support for 2 proposed city ordinances. One is a city ordinance, one's a county ordinance. The one I'm going to speak to first is a county ordinance, and it's a tobacco retailer's permit. And we'd like to get a resolution of support from this commission, and one of the approaches that maybe we can use to go forward is if a commissioner can be assigned to work with us so we can go over it. It's actually pretty straightforward, the tobacco retailer permit. We're one of the few cities in Riverside County that is yet to adopt this. It is a permit for retailers for the enforcement part. We're familiar with alcohol sales that are illegal and how vendors, retailers are, when they're caught, they're penalized and there's real consequences to it. In the absence of a tobacco retailer permit, the same thing takes place and they get a letter being reminded that they can't sell tobacco to underage people. Palm Springs has 3 times the national average of illegal sales to people underage. We need to do something about it. The problem is here, and this is a way we can stop it. Out of all of Riverside County, 4 cities have yet to adopt it. We're one of them. We're behind the curve. So let's change the norm and change the narrative. So why does it apply to parks and recreation? Well, young people go to parks, and when they're underage, where do they go if they've bought tobacco illegally? Often to places not at home, but parks and so forth. But this is a citywide issue, and it's also going to relate as time goes on with our discussion about a city ordinance to ban smoking in public places and so forth. And I've probably overdone my time. Oh, not 40 seconds. Well, I'll yield that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Good afternoon, Commission. My name is Robert Heinbaugh, and I'd like to add on a couple of points to the tobacco retailer permit that Paul spoke to. Number one, the significance is that there is zero liability to the city of Palm Springs in terms of budget, and there is zero liability to the city in terms of enforcement. The County of Riverside takes care of both of those aspects. It's written into the ordinance, so there is nothing that the city has to do other than to adopt the county ordinance and turn everything over to the County of Riverside for every other aspect of that enforcement of that ordinance. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Robert. Other speakers?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Dean Mangione, the USAPA Pickleball Ambassador for Palm Springs. As you've requested of me, I've prepared 3 separate written photo reports on the condition of the 3 parks we discussed at the Pickleball Subcommittee meeting on the 8th of September. I'd like to pass around those 3 separate reports. You've all been emailed those reports. I hope you have them now. Photos show a level of disrepair that's troubling from exposed electrical wires on the courts, sprayed paint on the posts, shredded windscreens. Please review these photos. I've sent them to the chairman and the council, city manager, and the city attorney. They need to be addressed immediately before the season arrives. Second, I'd like to present you with a formal written petition signed by over 330 resident pickleball players on change.org requesting that pickleball courts be provided at Ruth Hardy Park. Since you are here to represent the citizens of Palm Springs, please consider their desires and request for equal access to these parks' existing facilities. Third, I'd like to share with you a copy of the written request I've made to Dr. David Reddy to post a permanent metal sign for pickleball at Ruth Hardy Park as outlined in Ordinance 1645. Attached is a sample of the metal sign, which conforms to the city requirements in terms of color, font, material, and conformity with the sign ordinance. Placement of this sign was item 3 on our list of pickleball community recommendations agreed to by the subcommittee on September 8th at Demuth Park. I'm requesting you expedite this request to the city manager as the pickleball population is growing each week as we get closer to national tournaments where over 2,000 pickleball players will arrive, and we are training youth on these courts at Ruth Hardy Park for this national tournament. Last, I've been meeting with leaders of the tennis community at Ruth Hardy Park weekly. We've decided that we've agreed to collaborate to have the lights on all the tennis courts upgraded to LED lights so we can play after dark and get full use of our public facilities. We're preparing a written bid from a qualified electrical contractor to get the dollar amounts required for this mutual goal. We've discussed a public-private partnership with a local nonprofit for this capital improvement project, as we don't want to wait to solve this unnecessary lighting problem in the public park. Ellen, I know you want to reach out to the tennis community, so please reach out to these 3 leaders. They are the mayors out there. Joe Corona, 760-774-9634. Tony Selma of Guacamole's Restaurant, 760-325-9766. And Dr. John Van Dixhorn, 327-0650. They're regular players. They're weekly. Thank you for your service to the city.
Thank you very much, Dean.
Dean, I have just one question. Where was that? Where were the phone numbers written down? Thanks for reading.
They're
them
not.
all.
In fact, let me give it on my
Oh,
sheet.
okay,
They're
thank
not. I put them for the record,
Okay.
but you may have
Thank you
that.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gene.
Hi, Mary Barslow, Cathedral City. I had a cane last time, so I'm walking better. I just wanted to come and say thank you for the meeting we had on the 8th and all the people that came and taking the time to go out to the park and look at everything. That's very powerful and shows you really care. One of the things I didn't bring up that I should have that day was the bathrooms, and I see it's on your agenda. the women's bathroom floods regularly when I've had my events, and it smells bad, and there's some, it's one of the pictures is in there, but I think that's one of the things that as running social events for the people coming from out of the area, and they get excited about it. At Demuth in particular, that bathroom needs some attention. And I'm not sure how the guy's side is, so one of the guys can talk to that. I think there's some concerns with Ruth Hardy Park bathroom too, but it's in there. It's in the pictures. And that's just a health issue thing too. It's not about pickleball. And I just want to bring particular attention to that. Also, I'm getting a lot of inquiries about the Nationals and about where to play for people coming to the area. And I do have some events coming up, but we're running a youth round robin at JOJ coming up for the kids, and we're providing that free. And I've submitted my application to be a volunteer to the city over there. So we're really getting excited about helping build pickleball in the community all over the place. So anyway, I just want to say thank you to Vicki also for helping me get my 2 facility uses going and my insurance, and we got that taken care of last week after that meeting. So thanks a lot, you guys.
Thank you, Mary.
Hello.
Hey.
I'm Frank Alvarez, Palm Springs resident. And one of the things that I've been noticing, I mean, I started out coming to these meetings and playing pickleball about a year ago, and that was, pickleball. But the thing that I've come to realize is that the city is underfunding Parks and Recs. And we, citizens, have voted for 2 city-requested taxes, sales tax increases. The city gets a ton of money from transient occupancy tax from hotels and vacation rentals. And people come to Palm Springs to enjoy the outdoors. In the wintertime, they can't do it in Michigan, they can't do it in, wherever they're coming from, so they come here. And our parks don't look as good as they should. And I want to ask the commission what we as citizens can do to make this an issue for city council and for the city. I know that the animal shelter was horrible, and someone took charge of that and and now we have an amazing animal shelter. And we need to do the same thing with our parks. We need to put the parks at, from the low end of the totem pole in the city's priorities and raise it. So for me, it's not just about pickleball, it's about our parks in general. There's a number of cities have created large community facilities. There's a place called the Drayson Center, which is actually that Loma Linda University has, which is phenomenal. It's an amazing center, and it's worth the drive to go out there one day, pay the $8 use fee to walk in there and see. They have tennis courts, pickleball courts. They have a big soccer field. They have basketball courts. They have a nice gymnasium. These are all for university students, but it's also open to the public if you pay a fee. And the place is clean. It's well-run. And it really, I look at it as a model. There might be better facilities out there, but this is one that I'm familiar with. And I'd love to see a facility like that built here in Palm Springs for the residents and for the tourists, for everyone to use. And I think that would be something that, Parks and Recs could, a nice project like that to sink your teeth into that would benefit the city, the residents, and the tourists, and even, generate some revenue. With so many golf courses going under, I don't know if there's a public course where some land could be sold off to a developer, create revenue, some money that could help build a facility like this. Just, one of the ideas that I toss out there, and I think, but I'd like to know what we as citizens can do to bring this to the forefront for the city to pay attention, because this is what people are asking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
Run out of time.
Yeah, really. Do we have any other speakers today? Thank you very much for taking the time to come to the meeting and talk about things that are important to all of us. It's extremely important for us to hear from our community on all issues. So I really appreciate your taking the time to do that. Thank you. The city manager is not here. Has he sent any message with you at all?
He is not for today.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the agenda, the first item on the agenda is something that has been requested by the city manager, and that is a review of the parks restrooms. And I believe we appointed a subcommittee, and I think, Alan, you're leading that team, or?
Okay, thank you, Commissioners. Jody, Miguel, and myself were appointed as the subcommittee for the restrooms, and we met, divided them up, and went out and took a look at them. I believe can you show them the pictures, the people that in the audience? The pictures, we just brought a few of them. We didn't know that Dean and other people were bringing all these pictures, but the outside area, they're not very pleasing when you walk up to them. It needs re-landscaping or something done around the outsides of the buildings. And when you get inside, they were really a total disaster. The smell was bad. First we thought, you can go on to let them see the rest of the other ones. The smells were bad. The upkeep, the floors and everything is just really beyond repair, I think, or lipstick and fixing it up. We had open facilities like this with no privacy walls or anything, which I understand why they took doors and things, but it just kind of reminded me of a jail and institutional lighting, and was just really a disaster. So we all talked, as you see some of these pictures, and put together ideas, and I want the others on the committee and anyone else that's got some ideas, input that we can do, because David Reddy challenged us to put together what to do. We first thought, well, we'd go just real light with this and that, and it's like, I think our best idea is let's go for as much as possible. All they can do is cut us back. Just before the meeting, Charles said to me, what about some kind of bringing them into the mid-century modern design with a rebuild and everything? So that is another possibility. We had just gone through with the sheet that we sent out with the meeting today of the different things that we said. Power wash them from top to bottom, repaint them on the painted surface, rip out some of those ugly sinks that have the old tile around them, and some of them in the cement that is so worn, and replace the landscaping outside, replace the drinking fountains with something desirable. And it may not last forever, but we do need something to look better than what we have right now. And so I'm kind of open to others' input or suggestions that they have from the times that they have been in the parks.
I was just going to ask one question. Is that a single-use restroom?
One on each side. Yeah.
Okay, so it's just single one and clock the door. Okay, thank you. And is that?
There's two. But there's two facilities on each side, isn't there?
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Navarro?
So I was also on the subcommittee, and this was pretty universal across all the parks, because I went to Ruth Hardy and Sunrise Park, and I just want to emphasize the lighting was really, really bad, is really bad in Ruth Hardy. And it's like full of spider webs and just all kinds of dirty stuff. But one of the recommendations that we have on here is for more efficient LED lighting and possibly like sensor lights, because I know these fluorescent lights are on, it seems like all day long. And just again, emphasizing the painting of the surfaces, and just the tiles are really broken and kind of dangerous if someone slips or if trips on there. And just other discussions that we had, because I know city manager wanted to hear from us to see if we recommended any additional stalls to the ones currently existing in all the parks. So we wanted to focus first on cleaning them up first and making them presentable. But if we were to get to which parks could be seen as having more, we know that Francis Stevens Park right now, currently, there's restrooms inside like the courtyard, not really the park. So when there's events, a lot of the times those restrooms are closed and people have to use across the street at Coffee or all the other businesses. So if we were to add at a park, that's the one that we talked about that could use like just a new one from, startup. But yeah.
So a question about that. At Francis Stevens, I know the bathrooms that you're talking about because if you go to the theater there, they open it up for that. So is that are those public restrooms or are they public-private?
Kind of public-private, because again, right now Palm Canyon Theater is under contract for operating that building, and so unless arrangements have been made, those bathrooms are only open when they have events scheduled in the theater.
Do they handle the maintenance of those?
Yes, they do.
Those are in much better shape than most of our parks inside. But that's the other thing we should address once we do get it done. Some of this, I was there at 11 o'clock in the morning. If they were cleaned the night before, I think all the cleaning was done was empty the trash possibly and replace paper towels. Because where the trash can was, the lid was off of it, there was trash in the corner behind it. It was really not a well-done job from the group the night before of cleaning it up unless we had a major party in there between 8 and 11 before I got there that day.
Commissioners?
Well, I think in general, I was disappointed in all the bathrooms, mainly because people come here for a world-class city. They expect to, for example, get off of CV Link and they have to go to the bathroom, and they're going to go in a place which has terracotta tile that has been stained for 20 years, and I don't think they meet the standard of clean, inviting, and sanitary. And so my suggestion would be if Dr. Reddy wants us to come up with the big picture, I understand cleaning up these things. I agree with all of them. I have other suggestions on them. But I think we might investigate the possibility of upgrading all these bathrooms that were built in the 60s and make them up to the 2018 standards. And again, to make them more inviting for all the people who come to Palm Springs to be in a world-class city. If you want, I have specifics, like, for example, I would get rid of my suggestion would be to get rid of all the terracotta because it stains. You can power wash it, but the stains don't come out and it doesn't even look good. My suggestion would be if you go to your vet's office or you go to your dentist's office, they have an impervious floor it goes up to the side of the walls to the wainscoting, so that when somebody comes up with a power washer, which I don't think it is unreasonable to be done daily, they can just come in and in 10 minutes, they can sanitize the whole place. I had another comment. Someone called the drinking fountain scary. I don't quite know why. They do work, but I just think the whole thing has to be upgraded for today.
I'm wondering, Stacy, since this is part of the agenda, is there anything that you'd want to come forward and talk about at all? I mean, I kind of feel like there's a couple things going on here. One, the infrastructure of the city is rather deeply in need, and our bathrooms are certainly a large part of that. But Stacy, I don't know if you have anything that you can. I do not want you to feel as though you're being put on the spot defensively, because we were asked to look at it and just make recommendations, but you can help us, I know.
Well, actually, the cleaning of the restrooms is part of our janitorial contract, and they go in every night after 10 p.m. That's one of the things, obviously, we're going to evaluate now that we've seen some of these pictures. And actually, in response to someone's comment about parties happening between 8 and 10 or 11, that does happen with a lot of frequency. Restrooms are open by 6 a.m. every morning. You can come back at 6:30 and be shocked. They are heavily used. As far as the upgrades, the terracotta, actually the Measure J approved, not council approved, let me clarify that. Measure J approved capital project was mine, asking for funds to renovate and upgrade all of these restrooms. So that came through in May as a Measure J recommendation. Council's evaluating that now. So we're all on the same page. These are in need of love, and we do power wash them now, actually. There are a lot of folks, visitors, guests, others, that use these restrooms abuse these restrooms. The staff, city staff, Parks and Rec staff, janitorial staff, even with all of us watching all the time, we can't keep up. It's just a lot of use. As Dr. Reddy said, are the numbers adequate? Do we have, the right fixtures in there? I don't know the answers to that. That's where I'm looking for direction from you folks and from the citizens that are communicating to you. What do we need to do to provide this? We know they need upgrades, and we're right there, ready to do it. Just tell us what, and we'll absolutely jump on that.
Thank you very much, Stacy. One of the things that I think about often is in business, you never staff for the peaks and pay that staff all the way through. You adjust staff accordingly, and I think the same thing here. When we have large events in our parks, I don't think those bathrooms are adequate to handle an extra 500 people in the park. We need to make sure that our permitting process includes access to having bathrooms brought in, the porta potties brought in. So we need to start maybe building a staffing model around that. I know if we have one PS picnic.
That already happens. That's part of the permit process now.
But not for every event, because I will tell you, if I go to a pickleball event on a Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, the first thing I'm asked is if I'm there to clean the restrooms. And it's because apparently several hundred people have used the restroom in a matter of 2 hours, and they're not usable at that point. And I look around to see where are the additional.
Gotcha.
So I'm not sure if that's being dealt with as tightly as it could, but.
Yep. Then I'll let Jasmine answer that one.
We do require additional porta potties brought in for special events, as long as they go through the permit process. Now, if someone holds an event without a permit, then we cannot govern that.
Which would be your
So
pickleball
for the
stuff.
record, Jasmine is stating that if they have a permit and they have a permitted event, they are asked to bring in the appropriate additional porta potties. If there is no permit, then that may not be happening. So, thank you very much, Jasmine. Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Goodman.
Thank you for that. I think that there, and Charles, for your comments, well taken. And I think there's a lot of models out there for restrooms that are in various cities globally, and how they manage the volume, and the use. We have a lot of park residents, and so between 6 and 11, I'm sure they're throwing parties, and there's a lot of use. I do agree with what Charles said, and back to Frank, our public comments. And, if we're a world-class city and we've taxed our residents now twice, I think that some of our services should be as world-class as our airport and our Main Street and all of our paved roads. And there are utilities out there that are self-regulated. So you can have sprinklers and spray systems in public restrooms that do a wash 2 or 3 times a day, and clears that out. And toilets are automatic flushed, and sinks are automatic, and now hand dryers, so it removes all of the paper waste. And so there are a lot of products out there and utilities out there so that we can actually fulfill that. And so I'm hoping we'll hear some great stuff from the City Council for Measure J, and I surely hope it'll be enough money for you to make all those corrections.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, Commissioner Armstrong.
I have several things. One, if we are looking at new restrooms, the most glaring need of all the parks is the dog park, which is one of the most popular parks, and there's no restroom there at all. So I just want that on the record. But I think part of what we're dealing with here is the city has a homeless task force, and we seem every other meeting we're talking about the impacts of homelessness in the city and on the parks. We talked a lot about Sunrise Park, and this is another instance. These bathrooms are being used by a lot of homeless people with nowhere else to go. And we're sort of, so the parks in some ways are showing the burden of homelessness in the city, but we're sort of left out of the conversation about what the city tends to do with homelessness. So we can improve our bathrooms, and everyone thinks that's a good idea, but we're still going to have these use issues that Stacy says we can't keep up. And so we might make them look prettier and better materials, but we're still going to have this continuing problem of upkeep, you know, no matter what we do. And I think, you know, without a bigger conversation about how people are using the parks, you know, we're always going to have that issue in Palm Springs. I did want to just say about the drinking fountains. You know, we've talked about drinking fountains for a long time and been told there's just not money to do it. And every time we look at the drinking fountain issues, we seem to agree that they're terrible, but, you know, we just don't have funds to do it. And so to Mr. Alvarez's point, I mean, if the city actually starts funding parks to the proper level, as people thought they would by voting these tax measures, we would be able to, you know, have great facilities and upkeep. But until people go and ask the council to give us more money, I just think we're doing sort of Band-Aids. You know, we're going to be back in the same situation we were, so. And I do want to make a point, too. I mean, it's interesting to me that the city had a lot of money to put cameras up at the restrooms that don't work, but not money to fix our restrooms up, so.
Thank you, Commissioner Armstrong. At this point, I'm wondering, does the subcommittee, are you ready to draw a recommendation that can go to Dr. Reddy? Because it sounds to me like Measure J is out there and evaluating, and it sounds like you've got some feelings on things. Are you ready to move forward? I wouldn't want to wait 3 months to do this, but what are your thoughts?
I was surprised there was so much other coming up today with the things that were brought up to our attention. I didn't know the others were talking about it too. There is a lot that needs to be done. Travis, I liked your comments, except that for some reason, are you not getting the feeling that there is more money available than there was over the last 5 years when they kept telling us no? I mean, we were told to do something. So I kind of would like to go with the Cadillac plan and let them cut us back to the mid plan and get as much as possible.
Are you ready to be able to put something in for the next meeting so that you can actually have sort of a detail of this park needs to be rebuilt, this one needs to be rebuilt with 5 more stations, 2 women, 3 men, whatever, so that we can actually have a recommendation that goes forward, whether it's carried or not through council, at least the evaluation is such that you're looking at each location, determining, you know, maybe determine at Demuth Park that there actually needs to be more at the east end than there currently are. You know, and hearing about the dog park having none, that is a park. That's kind of not acceptable. I don't know what the situation is at Baristo Park. I don't believe that there's a facility there.
No, there's not.
And, you know, it is a public park. So, you know, but if you can as a team, and I know that you're going to be traveling a little bit, do you think you and Jody could work?
Are we able to meet with Dr. Reddy to see where the conversation is also going with City Council? Or I don't want to make all this work and come back next meeting with, I could do that and have all this Excel sheets and, you know, every part, but then be told that it's already made and done with, and it's not going to matter.
Well, if you remember, his challenge was to not only work with him, but staff in addressing the bathroom issues. So I can get with his administrative assistant to see when he may have time on his calendar to meet with you.
Okay.
So that we don't
Right.
have similar situation that we've had with other committees that have done a lot of work.
I think what's clear right here, though, is there is an absolute failure. He's recognizing that, and it's a matter of not slapping some lipstick on it, but solving the problem. And I think that makes real sense. Because we've had an influx of commissioners, I'm wondering, and because of your absence for 3 months, I was going to ask if there would be a
I'll
commissioner
volunteer
that
to
would-
to be on the subcommittee.
Okay, so if we can mark the record to indicate that Commissioner Lamort would be joining with Jody and Alan and Miguel. And Alan, when you're back, you know, pick up with it. But I think it would be something that if we could get something by the next meeting where you've had a chance to meet with staff and make a recommendation. And, you know, I like your idea of shooting for the stars and dealing with that which is in between. I mean, I think there's a great deal to be evaluated. I know that in many facilities that I go to today, they're no longer using for the men's rooms always water engaged systems, there's non-water engaged systems, and I don't know how that works in outdoor structures, but obviously, that can help in solving some of the problems, but any questions or any other thoughts? Commissioner Davis.
Stacy, was any time limit line given to you on what the monies that, and what was being talked about? Like tomorrow?
There were no timelines. Again, as I said, this has not been approved by council. I asked for $400,000 to renovate, not build new, not gut and start over, just to renovate the existing restrooms. And one point that I do want to note, I am currently working on a project for Ruth Hardy restrooms. It is not a major renovation, but it is an ADA access issue. So there will be, that's probably the only urgent thing that I have that I'm working on right now. And just a point of clarification, St. Francis School, we call it St. Francis Park, but the whole property is called the St. Francis School. It is historic. So we would have to go through HSPB to go make sure we do all of our due diligence before we move forward with any kind of planning on that. And that's just a caution on how far we go on down a path that, I've learned that on the landscape.
Thank you for that. But if we prioritize things and, again, solving the problems. Now, when you're talking about, what word did you use? Not refurbishing, but
Renovating.
Renovating. So does that include removal of floors and replacing, or just kind of?
Not really. Potentially, tile, we could even, and this is a great example. Yeah, so we, possibly take out the tile, float the floors, seal the concrete. That's, in my mindset, that's kind of where I was headed. Saying, we could do something similar on the, stained concrete can be stamped, you can make it look any way you want nowadays. Similar on the walls, do we do half of it in stainless steel? One of the things that I'm leaning towards, and again, this is just out of need, we have issues with the porcelain and ceramic toilets and sinks being destroyed with some frequency. So the lean towards stainless steel and more of an industrial look is probably where I was really trying to head, just for overall maintenance and the aesthetics going forward. And I'm in full agreement that anything we can do to get away from paper is a great idea. The other advantage to the stainless steel is we have an amazing amount of things that are put in toilets. Barbie doll heads on down the line, you name it, it's in there. So the idea of not scratching the porcelain or the ceramic when we have to do those types of maintenance, again, that lends to the stainless steel as more of a, for maintenance-wise, it's obviously something we desire. The hands-free dryers are obviously a big bonus. LED lighting, actually more ambient lighting, more open. One of the things that I had actually, one of the best experiences I had in the last year was actually at a rest stop in Colorado. There was an amazing rest stop restroom that I ran around taking pictures of. Probably looked a little creepy, but, well, it definitely looked creepy, but I get excited about these things. And it was the same thing. It was actually block, but it was stained concrete. It was steel slats in between that were about 3 feet high in men's and women's. And all open. The top had about an 18-inch gap all the way around, and of course it was surrounded by pine trees. It smelled amazing, but just the overall look of, we can go so many different directions with using more of our natural resources, rather than everything being as condensed and, dark and tile and, terracotta. There's a lot of things we've moved away from, and I think we can probably add maybe a few more stalls, a few more amenities. The water features now that have the bottle instead of, we hear about the fountains too. Those compressors are not my friends. Those are really, really hard in a desert environment. And I know there's a lot of options, and of course I know it all comes down to funds, and with whatever funds we have, we're happy to move forward in whatever direction you guys see fit.
Perfect. Commissioner Goodman?
Yeah, Just one question, the project that you're doing with the ADA at Ruth Hardy, that is not included in Measure J, that is a separate
No,
project?
that is, it's actually, it's simply related to the doors. Unfortunately, those are steel doors, door frames, and it's not compliant.
And it's separate than the
Completely
recommendation?
separate.
Okay, thank you.
Is my recommendation, or my recollection rather, off? Was Ruth Hardy Park previously not wide open? No walls, no doors, no anything?
Partitions.
Partitions?
I
Not during your,
don't
'cause I know you.
spend that much time in the men's room, and I
When that building was originally rented, it was block. It was all block.
concrete partitions, you're saying?
Yeah. Park restrooms, especially at retarded, there was block walls instead of stalls, so it was a block between block between block. And previous park supervisor put together a project where that block was taken out and they installed the partitions that were put into the restrooms now. So at retarded, there's always been some type of a partition. It's just originally it was cinder block in between.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Coldonado?
Stacy, so you said the 400,000, was that for all of the restrooms or in the city?
Yeah. Like I said, I was thinking more along the basic renovations and upgrades of, the surfaces, the fixtures.
Okay,
I-
thank you.
I would hope that you would go for the gusto on this one and get her more money and recommend higher and get better. So, thank you very much. If that's the case, we have the appointment to the subcommittee, and we'll ask you to pick up with that and move it forward.
I think we have the guidelines now of what everybody wants, and with Stacy's input, which appreciated, we can put together what they want to hear.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Moving along, the discussion on the process of naming rights for the parks and the recreation facilities. I know we tabled this last time with the concept that we would be having new commissioners on board and an easier time putting together an additional subcommittee. So at this point, what I would just like to do is request a subcommittee, remembering that we're not talking about just naming the park for the one individual that we've historically talked about, but we're really looking to develop an acceptable process and policy should this come up again. So with that being said, Johnny, I've got to assume that you're interested in being on this subcommittee. And Carolina, is that something that I could count on you to help with Johnny with? Is there anybody else that would like to get active in that? Now, this is, again, strictly developing policy so that we have a go forward, because we don't seem to have a policy. Did you? Oh, thank you, Travis.
Good.
I don't think it's going to take a great deal of time, but I think, Travis, one of the things that you bring is the concept of the master plan and the bigger picture, which I think is really going to be helpful to make sure that we've got a process together for a large picture on it. So if the three of you can establish a meeting and move it forward, if you're ready, just remember as you prepare and let Vicki know that you're ready to move forward, and you also have to include Vicki in these. I sometimes forget to remember that, to mention that, but please include her, and then she will know to get something on the agenda if you've got that position ready. So, thank you. One of the other things that I had asked Vicki to place on the agenda is something that is looming for us. I don't think it's going to reach out and bite us within the next 30 days, but there is a move within our current city council to be more inclusive on obviously the voting and what people are elected to things, and expanding within commissions to make sure that that we look as diverse as our community is, and one of the large things that people talk about, and my stand on this doesn't always agree with it, but there's a belief that if meetings were held later in the workday or into the evening, that many more people would be attending meetings, both from the, input from the public's perspective, as well as being available to become commissioners. With that being said, my hope is that we could jump on the opportunity to choose a time that might be, that work for all of us, but would also meet the expectations of the council, because as it goes on further and further and more commissions get ahead of us, we might be given, an opportunity to come in on a Friday night at 8 o'clock, being the only night that this room would be available. So with that being said, any comments, any thoughts about coming up with a couple of alternative days? In fact, Vicki, have we passed anything out, or?
Yeah, I gave you the list of what the current meetings are that are held
Okay.
either in this room and/or council chambers.
Council chambers might be tight, although I guess,
But you have to take in consideration, you don't want to have a meeting in this room at the same time that the planning commission is in the council chambers. So Wednesdays are probably going to be a day we wouldn't want to meet, because either it's a council meeting that's in that chambers, or it's going to be a planning commission meeting, so. And I believe in talking with Jerry Finnerman, who is televising us, that Mondays, especially the first Monday of the month, is probably, of the week, is the best. There's not a lot of meetings on that day. So we have to take into consideration of what currently is existing and how we want to, move forward. Because if the direction is that the council's looking to have more meetings lean towards the latter part of the day, is someone gonna, jump the gun and take a space that we have, and like you said, end up meeting at 8 o'clock on a Friday night, and if we are to continue to be televised. It's the key.
yes, Commissioner Goodman.
What is the time frame? So I see, for example, Public Arts Commission has changed to 4 o'clock. I mean, are they expecting a 4 o'clock time, a 6:30 time? Like, what's the idea?
I don't know that there's actually a time that's been established, but I get a sense that, John Q. Public is still working oftentimes. And for our commission, it'd be great if a parent could be on our commission. I know some of us are parents, but there's the old, my kids are still in school, I work, I've got to finish up dinner and then get to a meeting. So I don't know what the right time is. And we've talked about this maybe a year ago. I think it was prior to my being chair, and at that time we decided to stay where we are, which can also be, something that we do. But I just want to do it with, all of our minds focused on the fact that this could be something that our council comes back to us and says, you will move. And it kind of reminds me of the mapping situation. We certainly wouldn't want the plaintiff's attorney to give us the date of our next meeting, and go forward as they talk about with the mapping and districts. So I'm not even, at this point, we don't have to walk out of today's meeting with 2 or 3 suggestions. Maybe what we do is message our issues to Vicki about, 2 times that work for each of us, and see what she comes up with. Because it could come back that you pick a day and it happens to be the board meeting for my HOA, and that will not change for me, so I wouldn't be able to attend it. Or you all are very much involved in things and working things, so we have to be, cognizant of that. And some of the things that we're involved in are also 7 o'clock at night. So I would be fine with everybody sending their suggestion to Vicki and seeing if we could whittle something down and work it out that way. Would that work for you, Vicki?
That's fine, and then what I can do is, once I get a consensus, just get it out to everyone to say, here's what the majority looks, does this work? Or once I get it, we could wait and add it on the next agenda meeting for October.
But we don't know the time. I mean, we don't
No.
know if we should suggest 4 o'clock or 6 o'clock, or we're not really sure about that.
I don't think
mean, I
any
think that
real
would
direction
matter.
has been given by the council, and I think it was a few members from the previous council who actually brought this up. And I know that Chair Young had made the comment that everyone who was interviewed was very aware of the time and the day the meetings were to take place,
Right.
and obviously didn't have an issue with that time. So I think I don't know if it's so much more of trying to get a diversity of our commissioners on board, or if it's more so the public can come and attend our meetings and speak before the commission, so.
I will tell you, one of the things that I found being recognized out in the street, we feel like we're in a private room here, and gosh, there's nobody that I don't recognize, but I meet people all the time who say, I've seen you on television for the Parks and Recs meeting, and it's like, oh. So people are watching us, and that does encourage me that there are people who can't attend city council meetings that watch them regularly. There are people that do the same thing with our Parks and Recs meeting, but,
Well, I mean, I see Miguel's hand. Go ahead, Miguel.
I'm sorry.
So seeing that there aren't any commissions currently meeting like at 6 or 7, have there been any in the past that have met at that time, and has the attendance been more, and have people appreciated that? Like, is there a consensus out there of that time slot, like the 6 p.m., 7 o'clock?
You know, I don't know for sure, but I remember that former Chair Craig had made a comment when he was on the Human Rights Commission. They had looked at moving their meeting to an evening meeting to get more people to come to their meetings, and the result was they still had less people coming to their meetings, whether it was an afternoon or an evening meeting. They didn't increase their attendance of the public coming out and speaking. So, and I think their meeting was either 5:30 or 6 o'clock previously, and they tried that.
Commissioner Goodman?
You know, I agree, and I think that is kind of yet to be seen, but I think what I'm missing is, I'm kind of missing a community coming out and speaking at public comments, like the Demuth Park community. Like, you know, the residents of Demuth Park, like, what would bring them out? Is it the time of the day? Is it childcare? I'm not really sure, but when we do have public comments, it does seem to be very heavily weighed with people who have flexible schedules, who can take time out of their day. And I really do feel that, aside from us going out into the community and really soliciting public opinion and voices, driving those individuals in here, maybe changing the time would help. If everybody's time is going to change, I say, let's not make it difficult. Let's grab a 5 o'clock slot that's open, that is somewhere in between people getting off of work and getting here, and people needing to have other commitments as they leave commission responsibilities. That would be my thought.
Commissioner Bowley?
In looking at previous meetings, when people have something to say, they find a way to get here. If you recall, we had 21 people speak at our last meeting, I think it was. If they have something that they want to bring to us, they do find a way to get here whatever time we are, and we are televised also. I don't think changing to 7 o'clock on the perfect evening would bring in more people. If they're not interested, I don't think they'll get here. But if they have something that's interesting, they'll find a way to get here.
Just a comment on Ellen's comment. I live in the Demuth Park area, and the majority of that community is working class. There's a few here and there, and it's expanding. But maybe a little bit later of a time might work. But again, Commissioner Allen brought up a good point. If they want something, if they want to be heard, they come out and they do it. That Demuth Park area is very interesting because there's all different kinds of, it's a moving project, that community. So I don't know, I'm game to do whatever's best to provide a good commission and to get work done.
And I don't want to, I mean, the lights are on, and so I feel like I have some awareness. I remember at City Council when they were talking about electric blowers and going from a gasoline blower to an electric blower. When I went to the City Council meeting, I don't recall a lot of landscapers coming up for public comment. And I think the issue really mattered to them, and I do think that there's a disparity in marginalized communities that don't have access, aren't articulating their voice, they're not watching government access TV, they don't necessarily know when the meetings are. They might not even know Palm Springs City has a website. you know, who knows? And so I do think if the issue is important and they actually had support in mobilizing, they might actually get here. But otherwise, I don't think they'll come.
That is one of my concerns, that we don't live in a bubble and assume that this meeting works for everybody because it works for the group that shows up, because we have had people come at passionate times relative to children's programs, relative to pickleball, but I still wonder about the people who don't get here and what would, as you said, bring them out. So I don't want to belabor the point, but my thought would be if everybody could make a recommendation, and if we come up with a time, we would bring it back to the group, and we wouldn't just make the change. We would also discuss, we've got a time that works for everybody, or the time that we have now. Are we willing to, go with one of those? And at least we can say to Dr. Reddy in a staff report that we've reviewed it again, and we thought about it. We really looked at it hard, discussed it, and we can't move, or we've made this move. And I'd like to have you all think about it.
And if I may say that, excuse me, Travis, and then I'll pass that on to you. It would be really great if the council actually heeded to the suggestions of the commission. So, we can move all day long our time, but if the council actually does not go with recommendations and work is being done week after week and spreadsheet after spreadsheet, and the work that the commission is actually doing, falls on deaf ears, so to speak, then it doesn't really matter what time we have our meetings.
The great part is that's why we have the right to vote. Commissioner Armstrong.
Yeah, I agree with, I think, everything that everyone said. I think this started a while back. There was the feeling that the commission should have more commissioners who are parents, and that's an interesting situation. I'll use like one of my brothers. He could not come to a 4 o'clock meeting or 5 o'clock meeting because he's taking all his kids to soccer and lacrosse matches. But when he had his younger kids, he could get off and come to a meeting because we're in school. But it goes to that issue of when someone's schedule is being flexible. And I think to Commissioner Goodman's point, in a generalized situation in the evening, that's when people have more free time to come. And I do think that, particularly like with the pickleball, which seems to be a certain demographic of people that have more leisure time and can come, we are getting skewed who is coming to our meetings, and does that demographic really represent the city compared to other demographics that we're not seeing? And so to me, I'm not sure we're going to get more people to come to our meetings, but we may have more. And then as the commissioners, like for myself, to attend a meeting or a subcommittee meeting, which can take up a lot of time, I have to take time off work. I don't, so coming here, I have to, flex off. And so I think there's a lot of people in that situation who just don't have the luxury of coming to a meeting and their work just accepts it. And so we may be some different applicants and also people coming. My worry about waiting is because there doesn't seem to be a lot of times here. And even if we move it back a little, to 4 or 5 o'clock, I know that would help me myself, but I just don't know if we're all going to give Vicki different times. Don't we have to know what times, are there 3 times that are available right now at, 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock, rather than everyone is giving you 3 times, and none of them may work for what's on here, a little more organized.
So are you saying like choose a 5 o'clock, but choose a day of the month that would be applied for you?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
So what if I went through the list to make it easier for you guys and compiled the list? Here's what's happening on the first Monday of the month, and do your layout, and here's what's not available, or here's what is available, so what works in your schedules. So I'll work on that and try and get it out
Just
to
send
you.
what's available.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we can choose.
That will work. I'd be fine with that. Any other comments or concerns? So we've got an action to take on that. Thank you. One of the last things on this that I had asked Vicki to pull forward for us is a retreat. We've historically had our retreat about 4 or 5 months into our service period, and since our new commissioners are on board and we want to do it as quickly as possible. I was thinking about a Saturday date for a retreat. I am going to, if everybody is amenable to it, request the date, if we agree with it, of Four Seasons, my HOA. We have a large ballroom which would facilitate meeting space and the availability to have food brought in. We've counted on Commissioner Goodman to get us school district space before, but we could try a new place if you guys are all amenable. But if we could come up with a date in, I would think, October or November, I can get it submitted to my board and get approval on it for access. And obviously you all drive, there'd be gate access, but we can get you access if that works. Any ideas, questions, or concerns?
Well, first, I think it's very important to have the meeting. As a new commissioner, it's pretty hard to realize, number one, what am I supposed to do? Number two, when do I talk? Number three, I've got my Robert's Rules over here. So I really think that a retreat is very important.
What date do you
And I would think anything, I'm gone the first 2 weeks in October, but anytime after that, I'm free until Christmas.
I'm thinking October or November.
Just to make a suggestion, I would love to see it in January. Unfortunately, I will be gone the next 2 months out of the country, and I would really like to be part of a retreat, but I will be gone October, November until the end of December. It's busy season.
Comments, thoughts?
When do you leave?
He's leaving.
When? You leave in 3 weeks?
Well, in 3 weeks, it would be hard to pull a schedule together, although I think much to Commissioner Armstrong's delight, I have mentioned this to Commissioner Goodman. My objective for a commission this time, for a retreat this time, would be one topic, one team building exercise, and one topic, which is the master plan. That doesn't mean we walk out of the meeting with the master plan intact, but it would be, that as a result of that meeting, we would have, committees established and action plans around what it would take to look at the parks master plan, because I'd say it's probably 12 or 14 years old, but approved only 9 years ago, or?
Well, it was finished in June of 2010, was not adopted by council until 2015.
But the 2010 document was what was adopted?
Yes.
Okay. My preference, I apologize that Commissioner Boley might not be present, but I heard loud and strong from our new commissioners that were brought on last year that they felt a sense of sort of flailing through meetings because they didn't have the positioning of the retreat. So I would.
Yes, but like Charles said, he would like the idea of the retreat to understand better what his role is and the processes, and actually that isn't covered in a retreat. And if we do a team building and we work on master plan, which I think is a great agenda item, the city has offered, last year they, for the first time, offered an orientation for commissioners and for, right, isn't not just commissioners, but other people who are sitting on city committees. And that was the soup to nuts introduction, and
that was the Brown Act review?
Right, the one that the city attorney put on.
So I think I'm hearing two different things, and if indeed we go earlier, I just want to make sure part of that is an introduction for new members.
And I'd agree with that.
I'd love that.
I wonder, is there anything on schedule right now for the attorney to redo that?
I know he mentioned it at that meeting of having another one, but I don't think a date has been set. And I believe it was taped. so I don't know if it's still up on the government
That would be
channel,
helpful.
but
One of the things to remember, this is one of the
Okay.
only commissions that moved forward with placement of new commissioners because we had a diverse group and we had several commissioners who had not been replaced and had stepped away. So not everybody was selected, and that may be something that would cause the city attorney to hold off until people are reinstituted next January, which is when most commissions are being reevaluated. Why don't we look at finding out if Eddie's or the city attorney's program is available that we can get to Charles and Carolina and David, so that they actually have that access, and then we could have one-off conversations about it. It's not something that we would all do, and that's part of what you learn about the Brown Act is that if 5 of you are at a party, you don't talk about anything park-related because that becomes a subcommittee meeting, which must be posted in advance. So with that being the case, if we are going to be talking about not development of commissioners as much as our master plan, I have less of a concern of waiting until January. Any other thoughts?
I'm just curious how other commissions orient their new members. Do they take, is it during a retreat? Do they wait for the city to do it? Is it something that they do 30 minutes prior to an official meeting? Do we have any idea?
no.
I don't. I don't know if there's a great deal of new commissioners. I mean, I know, my hero Sid moved from here to Measure J and was on, prior to here, he was on. So there's a great deal of movement within, and I think, I feel very fortunate. This commission is highly populated by relatively new people to the commission world. So I'm excited about that because we bring people into government to,
I mean, maybe what we could do is schedule something 30 minutes prior and do an orientation and an overview of, the day-to-days so that, the first couple of months are comfortable, right?
Or one of the things they could do, I know when Chair Craig was coming on to the commission, he actually sent me an email, invited and asked to have a meeting with me to just really talk about what do we do in Parks and Recreation, what's the process, how, programs and that stuff. So I'm willing to do that. Any of the new commissioners, can call me, set up a meeting, we can sit and go through and answer their questions, concerns, and processes that way. That way we're not having to, we say 30 minutes before, but maybe it ends up taking us 45 minutes, and so now we've
Right.
delayed the meeting. So
Right.
I'm willing to, take the time, and when you have time and want to meet, we could sit down and answer any questions you have, and, just go through the process.
if you're, and the thing is, bring your questions and feel comfortable asking them. The only bad questions are the ones that you don't ask. So absolutely, Ms. Commissioner Boley.
I know, some of the main concerns that I had when I first came in, and it would be nice if they got it, is when can you ask questions? When can you bring up a subject that's not here? And those type of things, and, when there's discussion from the audience, can we question these things that, I'm sure they would like to know that.
Well, the one thing you all did very, very well today, and it's part of the reason I make that statement at the front end, is if people are here talking about something that is not on the agenda, during public comment is not the time to interact with them at all. If it is something that's on the agenda, it's still not the time to interact with them, because what we don't want to do is stop those, every time that person talks and the next person, we have a conversation with them, we address it during the schedule. If something is on the schedule, absolutely, at that point in time when it's opened up, the conversation is safe to have. Also, there is sort of a commitment that you understand the topics, you get the agenda ahead of time, and that you're familiar with them so that you feel comfortable about any vote that might come forward. You might feel uninformed on something and may want not to participate on that particular vote, but it's not that everybody could do that all the time, or we'd be coming up with no votes. So those are some of the big things. I think the front end of the meeting when you really try not to interface with people is extremely important. But I like the idea of getting together with Vicky and going over some of those issues. I still do it every once in a while. I'll call her and say, am I allowed to talk about this today, or at what point in the meeting, if it's not on the agenda, can I say something? So.
Well,
that-
the other thing is a new guy, what really impressed me was the number of parks that we have. In the last month, I've tried to go to everything just to see, what am I looking at? I mean, this is probably the biggest commission. You deal with almost every citizen in town, because everybody uses the park at some time or another. Somebody goes to Demuth Center to go to a meeting. The place is huge. And jokingly, I'll say this, I don't know, when do the jokes, are they acceptable? All the time? Someone
as
said
they're
to
not
me,
off
I
color.
should probably be the ambassador to the Gateway Park because it's so small. Anyway, that's.
Where's the Gateway Park? Wait, I'm not familiar with the Gateway Park.
It's at the corner of Mr. Chino and Jean Autry.
The bocce ball court. There's a bocce ball court there. Yeah.
And a sign.
Okay. I'm always afraid of that corner because people drive way too
Les,
fast.
if I could say one thing.
Yes.
For the new, because I still consider myself new. I think I've been here 6 months. And before I came on to the commission, I went to the orientation. And I was able to speak and talk and have a good time and learn. And I found out about all the parks too. And I've lived out here almost all my life. So I learned quite a bit. And it's quite a bit different being in here than it does at that orientation. So questions, it's very important to listen and understand. But if you have a chance to talk with Vicky and just air some things out that you want to know, please do it. That would be some advice to give to you. And if I have anything to say about it, I think that we should have some kind of meeting, orientation, so that we can talk and the master plan and moving forward.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. All right, so if that's the case, can we could hold off for a January date, which means we can bring this up again later. We'll do that. Oh, well, no, you won't be here.
You're not here in January? Yeah,
Well, he'll
you're
be,
here.
right, but we don't want to wait till the next meeting because, yeah.
Right.
So let's shoot for a date in January. Gosh, that's so far away.
And 26th are probably the only two because we're in Film Festival the 5th and 12th, and there's a lot of people that are involved in things.
How's everybody look on the 19th? January 19th.
Yeah, looks good.
We can include that in the minutes then. 8:30?
Yeah.
Or do we want to start at 6 a.m. like usual? 9:30?
11:30?
No, way too late. So 9:30, and that is a Saturday. I will submit the request.
Really? You guys sure, 9:30? Let's say 9 o'clock, come on.
9 for social, for coffee and.
Yeah.
See, there are no cocktails.
Until what time, 2?
Sure. 9 to 2. Great. Before we move on, there are a couple things I want to do. I have a list of the commissioners, and I'm going to pass it around real quickly, and if you'll just verify that your information is good, we need to get that to Vicky today. The other thing that is not on the agenda, but I need to bring up is relative to the elections of officers. Is that okay at this time?
You can do it under commissioner comments, sure.
Okay. So I'll start with commissioner comments. The council has instructed that officers in place will remain in place until January. Is that the memo? January of 2019. So I guess we don't have to vote or anything. I get to remain as the chair. I appreciate that very much. And Miguel, you can remain as our co-chair, please. Thank you. And what we will end up doing, and I should let you know, I have to apply to be back on the commission because this is the completion of my third year. So I will be applying to be on the commission as I actually applied 4 months ago when you all did. But I was told, no, you can't apply right now. We need to wait until the fall. Only because you have openings are you allowed to bring on new commissioners. So I will be applying again to the commission for another 3-year assignment. Just so you know, one of the things is you are only allowed to be on a commission for 2 successive 3-year term. There's term limits of 3 years, and you get to serve twice, and then you can go on and do other things with other commissions. But have people ever come back to a commission after serving elsewhere?
We've only had one, and it was Commissioner Darren.
Oh, okay. So he went elsewhere and then came back. So you get to come back. That's great. Because I don't care what they say, this is the best commission to be on.
We can talk about this afterwards? Just some comments?
Yeah, if you want to.
I just read
Sure.
it. Let's go around and let's start with Commissioner Boley on the commissioner comments.
Okay, the only comment I do have is I'd like to welcome our 2 new faces that we have to our commission. It's a lot of fun and looking forward to working and getting to know you. I will not be with the commission the next 2 meetings because I am on a vacation that has been planned for a while. It's not that I'm not interested anymore. Don't write me off after missing 2.
Don't write
Please.
them at all. It won't respond.
3?
October,
Okay.
November, and
I'll be
December.
gone October, November. I'll be back for the December
3
one.
consecutive,
All right.
so.
So I have nothing new to add for next month's agenda because I won't be here.
Have a wonderful trip.
Have a wonderful, safe trip.
That's great.
Commissioner Goodman.
Yes, welcome to everyone. It's so nice that we're growing and we have some diversity. I love that. The pickleball subcommittee meeting hosted a gathering at Demuth Park 2 Saturdays ago. And we had maybe 40 to 50 pickleball players at that meeting, which I actually thought the meeting went really well. And I want to thank Johnny and Jody. I think we planned it well. We managed the crowd very, very well. I think good things can come of it. I do want to make a public comment that I was actually really surprised at the pickleball community's assertion to purchase signs and hang them themselves at Ruth Hardy Park. So it actually hasn't come up in our meeting yet, but it really surprised me. In the meeting, the community meeting that we had, I personally did state that pickleball would probably get absolutely everything they wanted. They're mobilizing, they're loud, they're pushing, they're building their case, they've got their players. I've seen our city acquiesce and accommodate large mobilized groups, so there was no reason to believe that those things wouldn't happen. I remember asking the community to be patient with us, that our next step was to meet with the tennis community. So I appreciate Dean giving me some names for the tennis community, and Vicki and I have had a few email exchanges. In this letter that Dean has written to David, it says in the very last paragraph, this permanent metal sign was one of the points they agreed to, and nothing was agreed to in that meeting. There was no agreement. There were many statements that said, you'll get what you want, but there were no agreements. And on the contrary, I remember Jody and I don't remember, Johnny, if we talked about it, but point number 3 on Dean's list, which was their agenda items, was in question. And that says, we are requesting a permanent sign at Ruth Hardy Park on courts 7 and 8, stating that these 2 courts are reserved from 7 to 12. And amongst us, we had some exchange, didn't feel like that was appropriate, that basketball doesn't hang their signs up, or kids don't hang their signs up, or the softball fields don't hang their signs up, and why one court sport would hang signs up on a public court. We just really didn't quite understand. But nonetheless, there was no decision made aside from that the subcommittee would meet with the tennis community to discuss courts 7 and 8. And so I'm not really sure exactly how to respond to these documents that have gone to David. But I'm feeling it's important to either meet with David or put in writing that these were not agreements, and that the suggestion was we would meet with the tennis community, and then we would meet with David Reddy and discuss that. So I don't know if I'm missing something.
Just so you know, Dr. Reddy had sent me an email to kind of give him a little advice of where we were at. And I kind of gave him a brief synopsis of what was discussed at the meeting on the 8th, so that he was aware that these were the pickleball committees or community's recommendations of things, but nothing was approved or recommended. Because again, as the commission, you as a ad hoc, you're only listening to what they have. You would come back to the full commission and say, this is our recommendation. Do you want to make a motion? Do we want to approve this? Do we want to move it forward to go to the next step? So he was given that basic information
Ahead of time,
and
so
it
he
looked.
knew.
I gave it after he got the letter.
Oh, got it.
So my guess is he will be looking at some point in time of addressing Dean's letter.
Okay. In the minutes, and we voted on them, and they were stated accurately, our commission did vote. A motion was passed, and there was a vote that stated very clearly pickleball could use all the indoor spaces. They could use the courts at Demuth, and that we would recommend restriping so that all the courts were used at Demuth, and that the one court, should tennis players come, that tennis players had the first right of refusal. And we passed a motion and a vote saying that Ruth Hardy Park would be off limits for now until we could get to our next step. And so that we have not discussed that with David Reddy since it was dark in August. But that is in writing, and it was in spite of what people have said that we didn't pass a motion. So that was done. This is just time for comments. So thank you, Vicki, for that clarity. I'm glad I'm kind of on record saying that. The other thing I wanted to say was I can't find anywhere on any site what City Ordinance 1645 is, which is also addressed in Dean's letter. I'm not really sure what that is and what he's referring to. I can't find it on our city site.
And I didn't look at that, and unfortunately, had to give away my hard copies of the ordinance, so I didn't really go online to see where that was at. So I will
Okay.
get some clarification
Just kind
from
of
the city
curious, it
clerk's
must be around
office.
signage.
Yeah.
The other thing was the 331 signatures that they've received, 83 of them have declared Palm Springs as a residence. All the other ones are residents from other areas. Now, they might own homes here and they might be seasonal, but they have either put Washington State, Cathedral City, Seattle, Irvine, the U.S., somewhere in the U.S., Shasta, California, Rancho Mirage, Desert Hot Springs, Denver, Prescott, Arizona, Swan Valley, Idaho. So the ones that actually have Palm Springs next to them is 83. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Goodman. Commissioner Navarro.
I also want to welcome the new commissioners. I hope you know what you're getting into. No, I'm just kidding. I think, yeah, this is a great commission, and I've seen it evolve a lot. So it's going to be fun. There's going to be a lot of work, and it's going to be, you're going to learn a lot. So my only comment is, I don't want any of the public comments to kind of get lost, and just wanted to address the one where the gentleman asked us about the permit. How do we, I'm sorry.
You
Yeah,
could-
like how do we, are we gonna
You could ask it to come
or-
back as an agenda item for the next meeting. And then what I can do is get with either Paul or Robert to get a copy of what they may have put together, so we're clear on exactly what it is the ordinance is.
Okay.
And
Because
then
I
you
don't know
can-
where we stood as a commission to be able to address that, or is it within our restriction? or-
Well, I think some of it is they're looking at, in the parks, they're looking at, they've come in here a number of times of talking about the Village Fest, of having as a no smoke free zone type of thing. So that is part of the department, and we do have the signs posted. We have no parking and no smoking allowed in parks, but again, it's an enforcement issue. It's something you can look at, and I think what he's just asking is just your support of the resolution, which would assume they will be moving forward to council at some time.
Perfect, thank you. Commissioner Caldonado?
Again, I want to welcome Charles and Carolina to the team. We did have a great pickleball meeting. I'd like to put it on the agenda, if possible, that we start getting this ball rolling as far as working on DeMuth Park. If we're get with the tennis community, talk to them. From what I'm understanding, the community has kind of pulled together, and the animosity isn't so much, from my understanding. But we need to get this going. We need to get DeMuth Park going. There's a lot of things that need a lot of work done over there. So let's get this pickleball thing going and just move forward somehow. So.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So I'm curious, because I actually asked Les to put that on the agenda as well. I'm curious on what the process is because you're right, let's get this going. We did make a recommendation. I understand city was dark, in August. At the very least, what do we need to do to get stripes put down on the third court, tennis court at DeMuth? And how can we get a portable net or something that's it's stationary, you can kind of move it on wheels and lock it to the fence at night, and how can we get that process into place and not wait until the next meeting to talk about that process?
Well, since we made the recommendation already and it's in, I mean, that was made July meeting.
Yeah.
So, and that was to go in a staff report to David. So as long as that's going in a staff report to David.
Well, I wouldn't do it as a staff report to him. I would have discussion that this is what the council's wanting to have done. He would determine whether he wanted to have a staff report that would go to council for consideration.
So can you have a report back to us
Sure.
for the next meeting of what the outcome of that is?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And then a quick follow-up to Vicki, you said at the meeting that the shades.
The windscreens?
Yeah,
Yes.
the windscreens.
I just got the quotes in last week. And so for Ruth Hardy and DeMuth, you're just looking at a little under 15 grand, and that doesn't include the removal and install of them.
I noticed Ruth Hardy is horrible. I didn't notice before that they're ragged and they're no longer attached in several places. I was kind of surprised. Is that, I mean, that's something that's within your purview now. I mean, you're recommending replacement.
Well, that was, because we just, I got a quote, we were replacing the netting at the stadium, and Stacy's staff was working on the windscreens, and they, since I was dealing with the company, I had the guy come out and do the measurements for me, and I stated at the meeting on the 8th that we were looking at having that, and I should have the quote anytime. I got it the other day, last Thursday, I believe it was. So it's just now finding the funding to do it with.
Sure, we can remind our council that it's the going or reportable wage, or isn't that one of the issues that we're having in the city now, making sure that it is not just minimum, but also the recorded reportable wage that is expected for those people. That's why the price is so high.
That's just for, that cost is just for the material. That has nothing to do with paying someone to do it.
Okay, so it's even more for that.
That's, yeah, it's more if we pay the company to come out. Now, more than likely, we'll probably do like we're doing with the net, the stadium, if Stacy has the staff, because I know she's running a little short on staff, and when they have time, they could come in and they can take it down and install it, but it won't happen as quickly as if we brought a company in to do it at one time, so.
Thank you. Commissioner Delatorre.
I don't really have much to say other than thank you for inviting me to be part of your commission. And I'm excited for the next 3 years. So I hope I know what I got myself into.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Armstrong?
Yeah, I want to welcome you both. A couple of things. What Miguel said about Paul and Bob's request, if we could agendize that, and I think they made a good case of why it's a park and recreation issue. But when we talk about the master plan, I know sustainability wrote into their master plan every element about health and wellness, so that may be something we want to look at too. I do want to say about the tennis community, I hope we do a really good job of reaching out to them. I would not just take 3 names given by pickleball supporters as representative of the community, because last time we did post at the tennis courts, we got quite a few people to come. And I'm not sure if this has all been done, but I know that there has been some recycling containers put at the parks. There's one at the dog park now. I don't know. This was sustainability and parks kind of working together, but I haven't talked to the commissioners there to find out. But I did see one at the dog park.
With the new recycling
You're
containers.
right, yeah.
Yeah, they're spread out. I mean, we have, if you come to the leisure center, there's one as you walk up. We have them at the pool. So they're getting them out there.
They look really nice.
I think it's the first pass at them. I think they've used the appropriate budget money that they had to hurry up and get to.
Right, that was
but
my
there are
understanding. They
more
had about
scheduled.
13,000 they needed to spend to get funding they had.
Still my hope that we will get rid of the blue cans that are not recycling cans. They're really confusing. This morning, we had a family argument about where to put these in the recycling can that was brown that I couldn't find until you went around the back that it had recycling on it, or the recycling, or the other blue thing that was not recycling. So can we make it clear to people? Thank you very much.
Well, I too, I'm very happy to be here. I'm very excited to be part of the group that's going to help keep Palm Springs as great as it is. And everyone did tell me that Park and Rec was the best commission to be on, and that you even get a T-shirt with a logo on it. And I got to pick my own. I was very happy about that. But I had one other question, and I know it's procedure. Are there standing subcommittees? The reason I ask that is when I went through thinking about, okay, what am I going to do here? There are like 4 areas that I'm super interested in. I'll help on other things, but I'm really interested in a lot of, like, for example, CV Link. Is that part of us?
Not currently. They certainly haven't shared it with us at this point in time.
It's interesting because I'm talking to some people, and even they're now doing the Bel Air Greens, and they're figuring out, how much they're going to keep as open space. And probably that's going to be ours to deal with as well. So I think this group is going to get news to you. Huh? It's going to get much bigger. Well, they're also talking about Chino Canyon and Oswald Canyon, that if they go to the city, it's probably going to be in Park and Rec.
I wonder, I've had somebody approach me and tell me, you're getting Oswald Canyon, and I was like, what does that mean? It's on the side of a hill. There's no road that goes there. So not every element of land that the city takes over is immediately ours. For example, I live in an HOA where I think 12 years ago they gave a 5-acre parcel to the city. It sits on the edge of the desert next to a road that doesn't go through, so it's never become Parks and Recs.
Sure.
But so some of that stuff does get brought to us, some doesn't. I've not seen change in the 3 years that I've been, or 2.5 years that I've been on the commission relative to getting more land, but that's not to say that it won't happen.
But again, if there are standing committees, there's some, what would be the process for me to volunteer for them? For example, I love Tahquitz Canyon Golf Course. I'm there every day. So if there's no issues, I hear that there are ambassadors. I would like to be an ambassador to that. I know that Elle and I are going to have discussions about dog walking. But that'll come at a later time.
Dog park.
Well, that's dog park. I have other ideas about dog walking. I'm one of them. And the one thing that I did notice, and I guess I'll say it in public, the place I was most disappointed in was James O. Jesse. And I would like to take that on as a project. I thought that it looked less kept up as Demuth, and there's all that open land around it there's no planting on it. It just looks kind of desolate out there. And if there is any, I see that grin, if there's any thought to do something up there, I would like to also be on that subcommittee.
I would just say, you live at the south end of town, don't you?
No, I live right in the middle. I live by the airport.
Okay. I live at the very north end of town, and one of the issues of James O. Jesse is the fact that it is absolutely in a wind tunnel. I mean, they don't play much outdoor pickleball because if you threw the ball to serve, it would disappear.
Sure.
So that is part of the reason that it doesn't do well. But if we get anything and the opportunity to spruce up, although I think the building itself is remarkable and the care and the gym, I mean, people are dying to use that gym because it is one of our few air-conditioned facilities in the city, and it's pretty remarkable. So we'll definitely keep that in mind. Just so you understand, we currently don't have standing committees. We either have subcommittees or ad hoc committees. Subcommittees generally have a long-term solution time, if you will, and those meetings have to be publicly posted and be able to be attended by the public as well. So it would be like this kind of a meeting.
Sure.
Records the same way. There are ad hoc committee, which generally have a shorter cycle, if you will. There should be an end to the issue and a resolution to the problem. We've had budget ad hoc committees in the past. We currently have the restrooms. We have the pickleball issue / tennis issue is an ad hoc committee that is expected to be termed. But there may be occasions where we end up with subcommittees, but currently there are none.
Well, like, and the dog park was a ad hoc, and then we closed that and we reopened it because new issues came up about a year later, so.
Yeah. But there's an opportunity for a lot of involvement. I want to do a couple things real quickly back under Commissioner comments for me. Number one, I would like to assign Commissioner Cohen to the pickleball ad hoc committee that exists today. He had requested that I do that out of the meeting cycle and told him that I couldn't, but because he's requested while he is absent this week, we can still engage him.
Is his first name
David Cohen. The other thing that I wondered, Vicki, when we start to talk about pickleball in the agenda, if we can then try to get either Viola or whomever is responsible for the other side of the wall in Ruth Hardy Park for the...
I do, and actually, I had sent him an invite for today's meeting, but I told him I needed to know if we were going to have as an item by 4 o'clock last Thursday to finish the agenda. He didn't get back to me till Thursday, but I did talk to him yesterday, and he is planning on attending our October meeting, and we'll give you kind of the update of what's happening with the wastewater treatment plant, but he did let me know that I believe that is next week, they're going to be transferring everything over to the new plant, which hopefully will help with the odor and smell that's currently existing. They did have a visit from the AQMD and got a clean report, so.
So AQMD is not about
Air
what's
quality.
odoriferous? Because
Right.
when I was there after the meeting,
Ooh, we got a whiff.
yeah, I understand why, although the next day I was there and there were hundreds and hundreds of soccer players, so.
That whiff went away.
Yeah. One other thing, you all have these, which are brand new, and the concept of this is there are times we'll have events where you'll have an opportunity to wear this on a sport coat or on a nice blouse or shirt. The great thing is they don't make holes in your clothes, and it will
Thank you, Vicki.
hopefully look
Great.
nice. So
Really
thank you very
appreciate
much
it.
for doing that, Vicki.
And what about this?
Appreciated it. Yes, thank you. Parades. I would like to request that the commission move forward in attending the November 4th Pride Parade. I'm not sure on the 11th if there's a great deal of participation by commissioners in that parade, but if at all possible, for those of us that could, ride together, pull together vehicles, and be in it, I would appreciate it. I will tell you, I have committed to another board that I sit on to ride in the Pride Parade there this year. But I'd be there with you, and I would strongly recommend. We do have the signage for cars, so if we get convertibles, and we can slap the signage on. And
So can we have 2 cars like we did? I mean, if we did 2?
yeah, and well,
Or 1
there.
car? Do we have a limit?
I don't know. I mean, I'm going to guess that Pride does set a number of entries they will accept. I don't know. Jazz is still here, but she would know best of what Ron, his numbers are on allocating for how many entries they will let in. I know that Festival of Lights, we normally try to limit the number just because it's a very long parade, so.
Right, right.
San Francisco has a long pride parade. This is nothing.
So can we get Jasmine this list, and then Jasmine, if you don't mind taking a little bit of time, just letting us know which one we might be able to have 2 vehicles, which one we only have 1 vehicle, and then we can plan. How
Might it be more fun if we're in golf carts? Or park and rec?
Well, I mean, it's just how many vehicles? And so, yeah, golf carts would be great. And we could
It's
put
also
8
about
people.
getting them because there is no budget. So, I mean, we got them last year
They
because
were donated.
Carol went out and got a Jeep that the top was removed. She got them to donate it. Oops. I got a T-Bird that we had available, but it is also about us chipping in. The other thing I tried to do last year was get, or for the Black History Parade, was to get the Soul Cycle. I thought maybe they'd think that it was great to have the commissioners riding the Soul Cycle, not consuming alcohol, but just riding the cycle. Unfortunately, they weren't available, so.
So, and I think golf cart's a great idea. We could probably find 2 golf carts.
Well,
But I think you have to move them over and, because those are not street-worthy vehicles, but we can certainly have a topic with Vicky offline about that. Last but not least, I think that is all I had.
Yeah,
That's it. Vicky, staff updates?
Just, you have the list of the parades. I gave you the updated schedule. We started ballroom last week. So those of you who might want to get a little involved in some dancing, ballroom program has started. And that's the
Do they
year's.
do a lesson prior to the dance?
They do a lesson prior to the dance. And so last week they had about 45 who turned out without any advertising, other than Stephen Barb has a website that they do a number of dances throughout the valley and list ours is kind of the top one and stuff. So, yep, open. So there's no schedule for the year. So, other than that, right now I don't have any.
I would encourage
updates.
you to at least stick your head in and say hi and tell them who you are. When I went and introduced myself a year ago, they were blown away that somebody from the city, would even care that they rent our facilities and they do this. And it was beautiful. I'm watching them dance. They do some serious things, so.
I mean, I think we should do a team building and all go out for country western. Right?
As long as it's a line dance.
Well, country western, I think we should all do team building. Go to your calendars.
Well, we do
I
have
wanna get all-
swing dance on Tuesday
I
nights.
see you in those Wrangler
So-
jeans.
Oh, we also have hula at Demuth
Hula
Park.
at Demuth on Monday and Wednesdays, I think. So,
Well, we will adjourn at 4:13, and I thank you all for a wonderful meeting. Adjourned.
Adjourn.